Hello and welcome to another episode of the Femininja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I have a fantastic guest with me today. Her name is Dr. Cindy Starke. She is a physician certified in trauma release, a mentor, award-winning author, speaker, subconscious mind expert who helps women in healthcare heal from burnout using subconscious repatterning and optimization. Her award-winning book is titled From Fear and Failure to the Finish Line. Unleash your potential and discover the champion within. And she's going to explain what that book is all about. It's a fantastic story. Dr. Cindy, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for letting me spend the morning with you and speaking to your audience. It's my honor.
Well, it's a delight to have you. You have the most amazing story. So I'm just going to turn it over to you and say, share your story with the listeners.
Okay, there's a lot of different things I could say, but I'm just going to kind of tell you what's on my heart today. I always tell people that I do believe, as I went through medical school training, that I was the only person it felt like that wasn't from a family of doctors. I really found medicine as a way of kind of escaping I don't want to say a traumatic childhood, but there were some things happening like in my teenage years that I just wanted to get as far away from as I could. And I could tell my family wasn't doing was higher education. And that was kind of like my way out. It just was some drugs and alcoholics and some sexual misappropriation. And I just wanted to get away from that. And, after about 20 years in medicine, I started realizing I'm kind of just treating people and keeping them kind of stuck in this revolving door where I'm like making their vital signs look better. I'm making their sugar and their blood pressure look better, but I'm not really healing the processes that are going on in these patients' bodies. And I realized in order to do that, you really needed to almost uncover a whole lifetime of the way that people abuse their bodies and kind of like what they think is possible in their lives. And so that's when I said, well, I want to see what all I'm capable of in my life. And that's when the book came about, because I said to myself, I had a lot of mentors around age 45, something like that, and I went and taught myself to run and bike and swim, and I did this Ironman Triathlon, and I did 2 years of training. I mean, I knew how to run and bike and swim, but not for long distances. This was a 17-hour endurance event. Um, a lot of miles. I didn't even really commit the number of miles to memory this morning. I can't remember exactly how long everything was, but bottom line is, when I finally got to the race that day, Cheryl, the ocean swim, the waters were a lot more turbulent than they were supposed to be, and I hadn't trained adequately. So I was a little bit too slow on the swim, and then I didn't look at the bike route adequately enough, and I hadn't memorized all the turns, and I thought I had gotten lost out there in the bike. And after 8 hours of being on that trail, I look up and there's some official in a truck telling me to get off the course, that I had gone too slow. And there was like 50 of us, the same thing had happened, and I just was devastated. And so that book is about saying to myself, I can train more adequately for the swim, and I can learn the bike course. Let me repeat that whole entire training for Ironman and do another one. So I went and signed up for one 8 weeks later, and I crossed the finish line. But most people I know, because I literally still follow a lot of Ironman triathletes, they just give up after that one. They just say, "Oh, try again next year." But I'm like, no, I just spent the last 2 years of my life doing all this. So yeah, that's what that book is all about. And now
Okay,
I
if
just
I
realize,
if I can
yeah.
interrupt for a moment, you are certainly not the type of person who's going to just throw up their hands and give up. And I do want to just let the listeners know that you are not only an MD, certified in internal medicine, I think,
Yes,
and
yes.
you are a PhD in
Yeah.
molecular genetics.
Yeah. Yeah. I decided to do that. That was that was things just happen in my life. I always have felt I was very spiritually in tune,
Hmm.
and this opportunity came in my lap, and I just said, why not? That could be a long story, but I'll just suffice that to say that if I was in, I was at the Centers for Disease Control studying a disease back in the 80s that was really
Hmm.
similar to HIV. It was called
Hmm.
HTLV.
Hmm.
And I met somebody there that told me about this medical scientist training program. I never even knew that existed. I mean, I'm from a family of electricians and hairdressers. I never knew there was a medical scientist training program. And so I got into that program, and yes, that's what I ended up doing for the whole decade of 22 to 32 was a little bit of that.
A little bit of that. I love it. Just
Yeah.
dabbling in something called molecular
Yeah.
genetics. I do love that. So
Yeah.
I want to go back to the triathlon because, as you said, you
Yeah.
don't remember, you don't recall exactly how many miles it was. When I read this, I was doing your bio, I almost fell off the chair because the mileage for the ocean swim was 100 and,
2.4. Two
oh, it
point
was,
four miles of the swim.
oh, okay.
And then the bike is, and then you bike, and it's something like 100, 120 miles. I don't remember, but then the run is a full marathon. I remember the 2.4 mile swim and the 26.2 mile is a full
Hmm.
marathon. I just don't remember the middle part, how much the bike was.
Okay,
But the
so I
whole
have written
thing,
down here 140.6
40.6.
miles.
The whole thing is 140.6. Yeah. So somebody could do that math. Some people can do it in like 8 or 10 hours, but it took me 17 hours to do
Oh
that
my
because I'm
God.
not exceptionally fast in anything.
What did you feel like afterwards? I mean, physically, then mentally and emotionally.
Okay. Well, it was interesting because my coach had made me do 2 half Ironmans before I was allowed to do the full
Hmm.
Ironman. And I remember, just because my body wasn't used to any of it, I felt really terrible after the 2 half Ironmans.
Hmm.
Um, and but after when the full one, when it came time to do the full one, he had trained me adequately enough where, and I'd gotten the fitness kind of like, baked into my bones enough where I actually was still walking and talking. I remember, you know, uh, not to give too much personal information, but my intestinal system wasn't working that great because
Hmm.
the stuff you consume, all these gels and everything, that's the thing I remember the most. And physically, I remember, when you're running, took me 6 hours, and just doing this with your hands for so long. I remember, right here on like
Uh-huh.
the sides of your abdomen, it was almost like whips, like cuts in my skin, and that was the worst part.
Hmm.
Uh, but I felt alive and on top of the world
Hmm.
mentally and emotionally because I've really done it. It was a terrible rainstorm, and I love running in the rain actually, but it was just like, when is this running in the rain ever going to end? And my mother and my training partner were there with me,
Hmm.
and they both, I just remember them hugging me and taking pictures, and I had a little headlamp on because it was midnight when I finished. 7 in the morning when I started, midnight when I finished.
Oh my God.
Mm-mm-mm. It was such a feat, and my kids were little. I think they were like 12 and 10 years old. And when I got home the next day, they had made me all these posters saying "Welcome home. We're so glad." They called me their Iron Mom instead of Iron Man, and
Oh.
I was just such a sense of pride, and I was so thankful for the experience because, it makes me kind of choked up to even think about it. I've been having an emotional morning this morning for some reason anyway. But not many people, Cheryl, actually try to push themselves to any kind of limit ever. And the fact that I did it, I had the dream, I completed it,
Hmm.
failed once, and then got back up and did it
Hmm.
again. It was just amazing. So
What you
wonderful.
you failed once and got back up again 8 weeks later.
Yeah, yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you. You know what I remember? My coach said, "Okay, Cindy, you did not fail. You did not get your do not finish because of anything you did wrong. You just didn't train adequately enough in the swim, and you didn't memorize the bike
Mm.
trail. He said, the very next week, there is a full Ironman down in Cancun, Mexico. You can do it. And then he didn't have to repeat the training. But you know what the next week was on that after that first one was Thanksgiving week. And I said, my family has been without me enough, and I've been without my family enough during this training. I am not missing Thanksgiving with them, Andy. I said, let's look at the calendar and see what else there is. And, you know, because my first one was in like late October or something. The next one I could find was in January. And so, yeah, or one of them, the first one was in November and then the next one was in January. And I said, I can do that one. But he said, that means you're going to have to repeat the last 8 weeks of the training. I said, I'm okay. I can do it. And yeah, it was such a great experience, but not one that I ever want to do again. I've never done another triathlon again after that. I think some people get bitten by the bug and they love it, but I said, I'm a one and done kind of a girl. So yeah.
So I have to ask you, if you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you did this?
That was, I started my training at 44 and I crossed the finish line at 46.
Excellent. Okay. And I really wanted to have you, tell us that for the listeners so they know that, turning 40 is not the end of the world. Turning 50 is not the end of the world. Turning 60, and in 2 years, I'll be turning 70. It is not the end of the world. There's
Not
so many things. You said it beautifully, that a lot of people just will not push themselves. And getting that far out of your comfort zone, the amount of personal growth that came out of that, including the book, is
Yeah.
something you wouldn't have experienced before.
Yeah. And, my trainer slash coach told me, he said, you're going to realize after you get through this, like you will not take anybody's excuse for anything, because I could have used anything as an excuse not to do the training, not to do everything, but that all excuses have to get off the table. And one of the things I remember, my kids they still relied on me for their transportation at 10 and 12 years old. And they had to be taken to school at 7. And for some reason, I don't remember why I didn't ask my husband to take the kids to school on certain days when I had to run a half marathon. Every Tuesday, I had to run a half marathon for 8 weeks, just the very, very end of the training. And so I knew I had to get the half marathon in my body before 7 a.m. So I just woke up at 4:30 and did it, because it always took me 2.5 hours to do the half. And so it was just, I don't know, where there's a will, there's a way. I'm like, I can find a place in my calendar to make this work.
So 2 words just really pop into my head, and that's resilience and tenacity. And the tenacity is actually like in red neon letters, just kind of flashing, because that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, I just, when I get my mindset on something, I don't really stop until it's done. I think sometimes that's to a fault, but I think it's kind of fun. So,
Are you a Virgo?
no, I'm a Libra. I don't know what month is Virgo.
It's September.
Okay, well, right on the tail end of it.
Yeah, because I'm a Virgo, and I have what I consider my superpower is my it's just the incredible stubbornness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like irrepressible stubbornness. It's stubbornness squared, that keeps me going, and it has kept me going through some really tough times. So, I mean, you definitely have that spirit. You have the spirit of a warrior.
Thank you. I've never had anybody tell me that before. I appreciate that.
Oh, it just oozes out of you.
Oh, thank you. I love that. I just remember going, I can't remember where I was, and it doesn't matter, but I was at one of my kids, sporting events during that time. And this woman came over to me and she said, how is the triathlon training going? And I was telling her, because it wasn't linear, I had a lot of stops and starts, and she said, God really must want you to complete this triathlon. And at the time, I didn't really think about what all I was having to go through to do it. It was just like, I was just like getting crap done, but now I realize if I wanted to do a triathlon now, number one, I just don't want to. I can't even get on my bike consistently. and so I don't know, I do feel like some people get that, whether you want to attribute it to God or whether you want to attribute it to, him giving you a certain kind of a spirit about you, but it was all
Mhm.
me, I just
Mhm.
wanted to do it. And she said, I think you're supposed to touch people with this story. I said, yeah, you
Mhm.
might be right.
Absolutely. So I love that, getting crap done. I might even use that as the title of the show. I'm not really sure of the episode,
Yeah,
but that's it, that you just got to get stuff done. So
yeah,
speaking of getting stuff done, when did you decide, when was that light bulb that you were going to write the book?
man. I would say right after, I was very uh active on social media. Facebook
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
the one I'm most comfortable with. And everybody was reaching out to me that my story was touching them. And did not, how sometimes you're so in the forest that you can't see any trees, or you're so in the trees that you can't see the forest. And I didn't realize there was anything special about this story. It was a
Mhm.
very private, personal thing. Now I did put it on Facebook, but it was just something that I did. And when I probably about the person told me how inspiring this story was, I said, maybe I should write it. And at the same time, there is this woman, and she has actually come up into my life 3 times at very pivotal moments. And I don't
Mhm.
know, I almost wish, I could see my life at the end to see what this woman specifically is, because she's kind of like took my head and put it in certain places, 3 times. And but her name is Betsy Pake. And she just at that particular moment, right when all those people were saying my story was inspirational, Betsy was writing a book through um I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was just a little program. Chandler Bolt had this program. He was a
Mhm.
very young man, and he showed you how to get your book published on Amazon.
Mhm.
And she was writing hers on whatever she was doing in her life. And and something about her calling me and just telling me what she was doing, I said, well, I could sign up for Chandler Bolt's course and do it. And it was
Mhm.
guaranteed like bestseller status in 90
Mhm.
days. And and I was so into my triathlon training. I said, I bet I could do that in 76 days. And I did. I got Amazon bestseller status in 76 days. But he just showed you how to, brain dump, and you get an editor and you get
Yep.
someone to do your book cover and you write it. And it's a really, really short book, 70
Mhm.
pages. And got headshots made. And I don't know. It was just, it just kind of like poured out of me.
Mhm.
I couldn't
So
stop.
once it was published, was it, what did that feel like, especially when you hold your printed book for the first time in your hand? I mean, was it surreal, or was it just, what was that, what, tell us.
Yeah. Well, so a lot of the people that did their book this way just had an ebook, but
Mhm.
I said that is not going to be enough for me. Um, I said I want to have it recorded with someone's voice, who knows how to go into a sound studio and record it, and a printed book as well. And so, you had to do that through, Audible and
Right.
some other thing for the physical book. And so I got 100 of them delivered to my house that
Mhm.
first day. And I'll never forget, my son was 10, and I said, "Hey Wyatt, can you video me opening up this box of books?" Because everybody in Chandler's community were posting these videos, and everybody was just so excited. And it's almost like brings tears to your eyes. It's
Yep.
like you're holding your baby. And I was really disappointed that I'd asked my son to do the recording, because he was kind of like not getting the gravity of it. How could he? He's 10. I'm
He's
I'm
10.
almost 50 at this time. And and anyway, but I got it on video. And so it was just, yeah, extremely exciting to hold that in your hand and to see there's 100 of them.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to shout it from the mountaintops. And
Mhm.
I remember I was practicing medicine in Dahlonega at the time, and I the low hanging fruit, you know what I mean by that? Like
Mhm.
things that are
Mhm.
just like really
Mhm.
easy opportunities.
Mhm.
Low hanging fruit was I spoke to the community's Rotary clubs, Kiwanis
Mhm.
clubs,
Mhm.
and assisted living facilities, because I
Mhm.
take care of a lot of older patients. And so I was just like on a circuit of speaking to all these
Mhm.
cute little older people, much older than me and you.
Mhm.
And they also didn't get the gravity of what I did. So I just said, well, I don't know who I'm supposed to speak to. Um, but uh, but anyway, it was just very exciting. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was surreal because
Mhm.
you worked on it for so long, and just to
Mhm.
see it in your hands
Mhm.
and with a picture of yourself on the back of it and your
Yep.
name, it was just, I was so proud of myself for doing it. And
Aw.
I gave a book to everybody, like my dad, my father-in-law,
Uh-huh.
everybody. And my dad, I'll never forget, my dad called me and he said, Cindy, I didn't realize that you had such a hard time with your training. Because I
Mhm.
fell a couple of times.
Mhm.
You just got to really deal with a bunch of mental trash when you're doing that much exercising. And dad, it was really rough. I just didn't talk about it, but I
Yeah.
let it all out in the book. You can just be
Yeah.
so vulnerable. And yeah, it was the best experience.
Okay, so that brings me to another question, the next question. Did you at any point experience what I call writer's remorse when the book was out? Because I know when my second book came out, yeah, okay. And I dove under the covers and stayed there for like 3 weeks because it's like, "Oh my god, I cannot get the genie back in the bottle. Everybody's gonna, know my whole story, and there's some really personal stuff in it." And then I convinced myself that that was okay because anybody who knew me would not buy the book and they wouldn't read it. So I crawled out from under the covers, and the next day I went to the dojo, and on sensei's desk was a copy of my book, and it was like, "Oh my god."
Wow. Yeah. Yes. I felt very vulnerable and like exposed.
Uh-huh.
And you know, my acknowledgement section was like 7 pages long because I didn't know if I was ever going to write another book in my life. And so I wanted to really publicly thank everybody that had meant something to
Mhm.
me. And yeah, it's almost, I call it, are you familiar with Brene Brown's work
Yes.
of
Yeah.
vulnerability?
Mhm.
So I called it like a vulnerability hangover. I never really thought about it as writer's remorse, but you're just like, oh my goodness, what did I just do? Like I just told people that uh I have had a few failures in my life, Cheryl, and I just
Mhm.
admitted that to
Mhm.
everybody. But nobody, what I thought was going to happen is that people were going to think I was a less than doctor because I had failed this one test one time.
Mhm.
Nobody even looked at that. They just
Mhm.
overwhelmingly saw that it was, like you said, a book of tenacity and perseverance and
Mhm.
warrior status. And it was just inspiring. And I'll never forget, people told me I should go and talk to Girl Scout clubs around, my area, if not America, because they need to know that women can do anything.
Mhm.
But I never did follow up on that. I think it was so much attention for me.
Mhm.
It was a little overwhelming. So I kind of, it kind of like started and stopped. And I feel like this, being on your podcast is another way of me reclaiming the glory of what that
Mhm.
was, because it kind of was a little bit of a vulnerability hangover there. I kind of
Mhm.
went back into the hole after,
Mhm.
and kind of kept my story private again. But it's there forever. And anyone
Mhm.
who ever wants to read it, I think that is so super cool too. Anyone for the rest of this, as long as we have an earth and Amazon, it's there.
Mhm. Well, I can really see it being very impactful for younger women instead of like going to the Kiwanis and the older people, they're done. But
Yes.
to be able to inspire younger women who might be feeling, what it was like. You remember what it was like to have that, lack of security or confidence and don't even know who the heck you really are. And how are you going to get through the rest of this life when here you are screwing things up at the age of 21, 22? So I think it's incredibly inspiring to younger women.
Yes. I think I'm gonna uh you know kind of like bring that back out again and
Mhm.
see and pursue that as time
Mhm.
goes on here in the
Mhm.
next few quarters,
Mhm.
because I do think it's a very inspiring story. And
Mhm.
at this point, after COVID happened, I think a lot of people, I was actually taking a course to become a speaker, and
Mhm.
the lady whose course I took said this book is just perfect for being a speaker. And because I think I wrote the book in 2016, 2017, and then COVID happened, and everything she taught me about being a speaker, it just kind of like went to the wayside. So
Mhm.
it's finally time for me to bring that back out again, and I'm really excited about that. So thank you for saying that. That's encouraging.
Yes. Yes, and of course targeting women, of course, around 40 or 50, which is what you do in your coaching and your practice anyway. But oh gosh, there was something else. Oh yes, something you said that you'd probably never write a book again. You figured. What do you think now?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny you should ask because my psychologist and I have a, you could call her a psychologist, or she calls herself an executive coach, but she
Mhm.
and I have been working side by side every single week together for like 3 years now, and she and I are going to write a book together about um I don't even know exactly what it's gonna be, so I kinda don't wanna 100%
Mhm.
say, but it was me getting out of a marriage. Let's just say it
Mhm.
like this, out
Mhm.
of a marriage that, I think had run its course and wasn't
Mhm.
necessarily good for me anymore,
Mhm.
but, she wants to say from her standpoint what she was seeing, and then I wanna tell it from my standpoint what I was going through because it was very
Ooh.
difficult. It was a 22-year marriage. There were 2 kids, um, just a lot of, power plays, for
Mhm.
lack of a better word, and I don't know exactly how it's gonna come out, but she and I have talked about that, so I'm either gonna write a book with her, and that'll be it, or I'm gonna write another book completely altogether. I feel like I have 2 books in me. I want to inspire people after
Mhm.
menopause, women
Mhm.
specifically, of course, after menopause, after retirement, after divorce, and after
Mhm.
becoming an empty nester, how these can be the best years of your life.
Mhm.
And I've gone through a lot over these past 4 years in that regard too. So it's so many things you could write about, Cheryl, right?
Mhm. Right. And that's one of the things that I tell a lot of my guests who have written a book. I said, you know what? Writing books is like eating potato chips. You just cannot stop at just one.
Oh, well, I want to read both of your books, and I would love to come back on your show one day when we have even more to talk about.
That was my next point was, since you are working on this book, and I know it's going to be done because in the short time that I have known you, I have all the confidence in the world that it is going to be done. You said it, it will be done. And so when it is done, I want you to come back, and just share a little bit more of your wisdom. And I know I don't want to take much more of your time because I know and want to let the listeners know that Cindy has really taken time. She's at work right now.
Yeah.
So, but don't tell her boss. We won't tell anybody. So, shush, that's just a little secret between friends.
Someone's covering my pager, and yeah, I just didn't want to say no to you, and but I
Oh.
also didn't want to say no to the hospital because they needed me this morning last minute. So I felt like
Mhm.
I could sneak over here and do both for 30 minutes.
The life of a healthcare worker. And that's another thing. Now, Cindy, I would love for you to be able to tell the listeners where they can get a hold of you, or if they want to connect with you, your website, any links you want to share. Of course, they're in the show notes, but I love for the guests to be able to articulate it because it makes it a lot more personal.
Yes, I always send people to my website. It is just my name, drcindystark.com, and there's an E on the end of Stark. And there is a link to my book on Amazon. And one thing I love to give back to the community is 15-minute phone calls to see
Mhm.
if there's anything that I could do to help you along your journey. And so there's a link there to book a call with me and my free training. There's
Mhm.
a really lovely 35-minute training that I did
Mhm.
about my group coaching programs.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's all right there, even Facebook, all that stuff. So if they could just go to drcindystark.com, that would be incredible.
I love that you have to say there's an E on the end of your name because I always have to say when I spell my name out, there's no E on the end of it because everybody wants to put an E on the end of I love. And, I can totally understand. Force, just habit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because people will just leave it off, or if they see the E, then they'll pronounce it Starkey. And it is not Starkey. It's Cindy Stark with an E on the end.
It's not Starky, but you are snarky. We can say that. That was a really bad
Right.
pun. My goodness, for this early in the morning. Cindy, thank you
You're
so much for being here. Oh, it's
welcome.
just been such an honor and a pleasure. And before we sign off, is there any like final little tiny pearl of wisdom you would like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I just want everyone to always know that you can do anything you set your mind to. And one thing, another theme of my book is that if you break it down into small enough pieces, you can accomplish anything, no matter how big it is. And so those are the two things. You can do anything and break it down small enough, and you can accomplish anything. And at the end of the book, there's even a little 8-week. I've forgotten I did this, Cheryl. I kind of like put the book to bed, like stuck it in its box for a few years and got it back out a few years ago. And I even have a little 8 weeks, almost like a Bible study, but it's like
Uh-huh.
a book club study. And
Mhm.
I have 8 weeks worth of prompts for us, 8 chapters, 8 weeks of prompts for deeper thinking questions at the end. And so it'll really help you get through anything that you want to get through in life, especially if it seems big and
Mhm.
insurmountable. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm going to do this afternoon. I'm going on to Amazon and I'm going to put that in my cart because I have another one sitting in my cart. I just haven't hit, buy yet, but I'm going to get that because I am
Thank you.
dying to read the book, but I'm really dying to hear those 8 little
Yeah.
exercises at the very
Yes.
end.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here, especially on a day that's, you are working. But again, we will not tell that to anybody. And
Thank you. It was so lovely to be here with you and your audience.
thank you. They're pretty great. I love my listeners. They're absolutely fantastic. I hear from them every now and again, and it's just like a little present. It's like, oh, that's so sweet. But anyway, Dr. Cindy, thank you so much for being here. You are fantastic, and I loved having you on the show.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. And everybody, thank you so much for listening. What an incredible story. So empowering. And I just want to, remind you that you can do anything you want to do when you put your mind to it, just like Dr. Cindy said. Break things up into smaller pieces. You can do it, and do not let anybody else tell you that you can't.
That's right.
And that is the way of the Femininja.